Hey everybody. So I want to deal today with a question that's haunted me for years now. Ever since I started trying to convince people who should know better that they're making a mistake by supporting Donald Trump and his MAGA movement. And I've been thinking about it more in recent days for two reasons. First, because I've been grappling with the insanity of that Oval Office meeting between Donald Trump and President Zelensky, and the insanity of Trump's followers' response to that meeting. And then, second, in my attempt to understand the MAGA movement's willful and obstinate ignorance on something so important to the security of our nation, I've been diving lately a little bit deeper into Dietrich Bonhoeffer's theory of stupidity. And this isn't going to be a video about that theory, but I intend to make some videos about it in the coming weeks. So this is more of an introduction into why I've been thinking about it more lately. And so here's my question for today. Are Americans simply too stupid to hold on to our constitutional democracy? And I know Donald Trump believes that we are too stupid to stop him, but are we? Is he right in making that assessment of us? And my answer, unfortunately, is just maybe. We just might be too stupid to stop the takeover of our democracy by Trump and the other authoritarians in the MAGA movement. But I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing here if I believed that Donald Trump was right about us. I wouldn't do this work if I had no hope for our ability to wise up as a nation. The books that I write and the content I create here are all based on a glass half full approach to the world. So when it comes to our own ability to rise above our stupidity as a nation, I do think that the glass is at least half full. Yes, we did stupidly turn over power to a sociopathic criminal who wants to destroy the checks and balances in our system. And, those are checks and balances that would keep him from refashioning America into the sort of mafia state that he admires in Vladimir Putin's Russia. Like, that's true. And yes, the Republican Party, which I belonged to for my entire life until they tried to force Donald Trump on me, is proving to be the most cowardly, most anti-intellectual, and most hypocritical pack of subservient dolts to ever represent the American people, at least in my own lifetime. So that's true. And yes, the evangelical movement in America, in which I labored as a pastor for 20 years, is proving to be just as reprehensible in its lust for worldly power and wealth as every critic of Christianity has ever charged us with. And many evangelicals are proving every negative stereotype of Christians by eagerly lapping up just the most inane and insane teachings of the obviously unchristian charlatans who make excuses for Donald Trump in Jesus' name, and who are taking advantage of their followers' gullibility to enrich and empower themselves in Jesus' name. So yeah, that's true. So sure, by those measures, I totally get why people might say that yes, America has become too stupid to save our democracy. But I'm also seeing glimpses of hope every day. I'm hearing from people every day who've been silent so far, who would never consider voting for Trump themselves, but who've also never spoken out about his abuses before. More people are speaking out now, and I think that's going to only increase with every absurdity that the MAGA movement tries to force us to accept. And I'm also hearing from people who've changed their minds about Trump and MAGA since the election. I'm not just living on false hope here. I'm seeing evidence that the things that I care about, things like truth and justice and peace, still matter, and they can still move people to take action. And when I say peace, I don't mean the sort of peace where a stronger country terrorizes a neighboring country, tortures and murders its citizens, destroys the infrastructure of that country, and then buys off the most powerful country in the world so they can gang up on the smaller country, so they can force that smaller country into giving up its mineral resources in exchange for an end to the torture and the killing. That's not what I mean by peace. By peace, I mean true peace, shalom, a peace that's grounded in truth and justice and that allows for human flourishing. And I'm encountering more and more people who want that kind of peace and who aren't being fooled by the powerful goons of the world who try to convince us that everyone is corrupt, so we might as well align with the worst of them to protect our own piece of the pie at the expense of our souls. So I'm hearing from more people every day who are rejecting that debased view of the world and who are looking for answers on how to defeat it. So I do have hope that ultimately Americans will not be too stupid to protect our democracy. And I believe that strongly enough that I'm going all in on being part of the solution. I'll have more to say about that in a later video, but I am taking steps to do this work full time in the near future. And I wouldn't be doing that if I believed that this work doesn't matter. But right now, the authoritarians and the oligarchs who are trying to seize power for themselves, they know exactly what they want America to look like in the coming years. And right now, I think the average American just doesn't seem to have a clue what we want. Or more to the point, I don't think we have a clue about how our constitutional democracy enables us to build the future that we want. I think we undervalue it. And we don't seem to understand that our alliances around the world have been possibly our greatest strength in building the security and the connections that we need in order to have become the strong nation that we are. And that lack of understanding and that lack of focus makes us susceptible, I think, to falling for an awful lot of just evil BS right now. And the response by Trump supporters to that catastrophic Oval Office meeting with President Zelensky and his supporters' acceptance of his betrayal of Ukraine in the days that followed are a window, I think, into how stupidity works. So I'm going to be opening that window in several videos in the coming weeks because I don't think we can solve the problem of stupidity if we don't properly understand it. That Oval Office meeting someday, I think, is going to come to symbolize the utter corruption of America that's taken place under Donald Trump, the most corrupt human being to hold the office of president. And stupidity abounds in that meeting and in the MAGA responses to the meeting. So as I unpack that meeting in a few of my videos over the coming weeks, I just want us to be thinking about stupidity in this way. Forrest Gump told us that stupid is as stupid does. And I think that's a great starting point. When Bonhoeffer talked about the stupidity of the German people that led to Hitler's rise, he wasn't talking about their intellect. Stupidity to Bonhoeffer is not an intellectual state, it's a moral choice. It's exactly what I've been saying in different ways over the years. I've called it like motivated ignorance or willful blindness. As a preacher, I often used to use a line that a lot of preachers use: sin makes you stupid. You intellectually know that the money in the cash register isn't yours, and you know intellectually that you might get caught, but your desires lead you to ignore those intellectual warnings because you really want that $20. Maybe you didn't know your employer had set up a camera to catch the person who was pilfering, but you knew it was wrong and you knew you were taking a risk. Stealing the money was a stupid choice, but the stupidity wasn't grounded in a lack of intelligence. It was grounded in a lack of character. Stupidity, in the way that I talk about it, is not a defect of intelligence, it's a defect of character. So when it comes to the MAGA movement or any fascist movement in history, it's not that the people who follow the corrupt leader are dumb. It starts when people make a moral choice to prioritize their commitment to their tribe, to their people. And then they make a moral choice to only take in the information that props up their version of reality with their people on top. That's been, for me, the hardest lesson to learn in all my years of trying to wake Christians up to the evils of the MAGA movement. I used to think that if I just told people the truth about Trump, then their eyes would be opened and they'd obviously reject him. But what I found is that I could lay out an exhaustive list of facts to prove a basic point about something he'd done or said, But every time they would engage in this three-step process that I just would refer to as motivated ignorance. First, the first step is that they would just deny the obvious facts, and they'd call them fake news, and they'd refuse to research those facts on their own. So, like, we can use this obvious example of the January 6th insurrection, but I'd already learned this lesson, unfortunately, long before that happened. But a lot of the Trump supporters in my life thought the January 6th insurrection was a bad thing. But at first, they blamed it on Antifa and people like that. And they denied that it was Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol. But these aren't dumb people I'm talking about. These are friends of mine, and they're not intellectually stupid. They made a moral choice to remain ignorant of the fact that it was Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol. So that's the first step in a pattern that I've seen play out 100 times with Trump supporters. They deny the obvious facts and they refuse to investigate them. And that's not a defect of intelligence, it's a defect of character. But then the second step of the process is this. At some point on the big things, the facts just become inescapable. So they can't deny those facts with any shred of moral authority. So the second step is the whole so what stage of the process. Sure, it was Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol. So what? And then the false equivalencies start flowing, with Black Lives Matter protests or whatever. And then the cynical deflections happen, like, so what? Something, 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 boys playing girls' sports, yada, yada. So what? And again, writing off an actual violent attack on our democracy, fomented by the most corrupt president in history, and getting to the point where you can say, so what about it? That's not a lack of intelligence. That's a lack of character. But then over time, the third stage of the process happens. Remember, stage one is, it didn't happen. Stage two is, so what that it happened? And then stage three is, I'm glad it happened. That's why people who once denied that it was Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol are now cheering for, like, the January 6th choir. Or they're celebrating and blowing frickin' shofars outside the jails where pardoned January 6th insurrectionists were released because of Trump's pardons. That's not an intellectual problem. That's a moral problem. But it's profoundly stupid. And now we've reached stage 3 of the process regarding Ukraine. Trump has been on Putin's side from the very beginning. I've warned about it for years. And people have denied the obvious facts that make that conclusion inescapable. And we got to stage 2 during the first impeachment, I think. Sure, Trump was pressuring President Zelensky and putting him at risk of further invasion from Russia by threatening to withhold the weapons Congress had allocated for Ukraine unless Ukraine did him a favor. This clearly showed that Trump didn't want to help Ukraine, and he didn't care what Russia did to them. He only cared about using their vulnerability to his own advantage. And in the impeachment that followed, the Republican response and the response of Trump supporters was, so what? Sure, it wasn't a good thing for Trump to try to extort an ally, but so what? He did give Ukraine the weapons in the end, once he got caught. So now we're at stage 3. Now Trump and Vance intentionally, I believe, blew up an Oval Office meeting with Zelensky, and then they used that blow up as a pretext for cutting off aid. And Trump has even shut off any intelligence help that we were given to Ukraine, which they desperately need in order to protect themselves. And Ukrainians are dying as a direct result of that decision by Trump, because Russia has ramped up their bombardment of Ukraine because of this lack of intelligence now that we're giving to Ukraine. They just shut it off like a switch. Trump is helping Russia to win that war. And he's trying to force Ukraine to hand over mineral rights in the process. And more and more of Trump's supporters are all the way here at stage 3, way past denying that, way past saying, so what? They're actively saying Ukraine is now the enemy. And they're backing Trump's actions, even though those actions are destroying the alliances that have kept us safe and strong for 80 years. That's profoundly and irreparably stupid. But it's not due to a lack of intelligence. It's all due to a lack of character. Sin makes you stupid. And the MAGA movement long ago willingly became the stupidest movement in America. And so, my question for people who grew up like me that are generally conservative, maybe you generally voted for Republicans in the past, if you're not stupid, if you don't share the goals of the MAGA movement, could you please stop helping them? So, thanks for listening.